My name is Tim Anthon. I work for the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority. It was set up in response to the major earthquakes that impacted on Christchurch in 2010 and 2011. I live in New Zealand, in Christchurch, working on those projects. I am a project director on the anchor projects there, so there are a number of key projects which were identified to assist in the rebuild. I've just finished the bus interchange on that, and we'll be moving on to new projects when I finish this course. Alliance contracting and the advantages and disadvantages of that is, I think what we need to do is to go back to the history of what is an alliance contract, where has it come from, what's its basis. And it actually goes back almost to the 90s in the UK with the Latham and the Egan reports, which set about in a time when there was huge amounts of conflict within the construction industry, and it was virtually impossible to create and build a project without ending up in some form of conflict. That was replicated in Australasia as well. Australia and New Zealand had those same issues. What came out of that was a concept of partnering. In the UK, that partnering was formed into what they called a PPPs 2000 form of contract, but it didn't really gel well with the industry, in particular the infrastructure sector. And what evolved in that in Australasia was this partnering alliance approach. Now, an alliance is ideal when you've got a project where you've got an owner who fully understands the risks in their business they're in, such as a roading authority is a good example of an owner in that respect. And there is a number of risks that can't be identified and that the project needs to start as soon as possible. So by coming up with an alliance, what you're actually doing is identifying and sharing the risks appropriately in an open form of contract that you can actually then work with. Now, when I say open, I don't mean that it's loose. I just mean that it's clear on what the responsibilities are as to who is doing what and how it can work. I think the best thing to do there is to actually use a real-life example. And this was in a response to the events of 2011 in Christchurch, where there was 169 kilometres of sewer pipes that needed to be replaced, 69 kilometres of water pipes that needed to be replaced, 135 kilometres of roading that needed to be worked, all of which needed to happen as soon as possible to get basic services back to the people. All of which is high-risk activities, all of which there wasn't the time to actually define exactly what each piece of work was and to start quickly. So there was an alliance contract formed there between two central government departments, which was the Roading Authority and CERA, and the Christchurch City Council, which was a local council responsible for the delivery of most of those services. Into that group were brought the 5 major contractors in the area in that utilities work. And that formed what they called the Stronger Christchurch Infrastructure Rebuild Team, or SCIRT. Now, SCIRT was set up with a board that involved members from all of those groups. There was 8 board members, which were the chief execs from those individuals were brought together on that. They then set up working groups who then put up the contracts. So as an alliance, it worked really well. There was clear output requirements, as well as clear undertaking as to what the works would be. So the success of an alliance is having that ability to understand not necessarily what the detail of the scope of work is, but understanding what your outputs are, and then being able to actually work with the individual contractors when they've got a guaranteed profit, which is what is required, and there is a clear understanding of the risks, and again that the clients actually understand the business that they're doing. If you take a more traditional PPP, where one of the challenges of the PPP and one of the advantages of PPP is being able to get the use of private sector funds as much as the private sector knowledge. That takes the time to put in place to ensure that there is actually value for money for the public sector and for government, because we are spending our taxpayers' money, so we have to actually make sure that we're getting best value for money. The uses of alliancing in that place enable that to happen with the funding that was actually coming from the government. I think what was notable as a fact is that it was established and commenced as soon as it did. It was put into place, the contractors worked together, and more so now when it's been in place for 3 years, that the contractors are still working, and it's still working as an alliance partnership. And I think that is a testament to its success. There have been issues, there are always issues with any contract, but they are managed within the contract. None of those issues are even worth mentioning. They're just the normal things that happen, as understanding what the issues are, where the risks are, and how they move forward in that. So from the public perception, progress is being made. Our contractors are delivering quality work, and it's being planned out and working together still as a team. And I think that's probably the highlight of it here, is that we are still having a team approach, that the alliance model was set up is working effectively. No, it was totally unprecedented. I mean, to have a city to end up with 135 kilometres of roading that need to be doing, that amount of sewage work that needs to be replaced, but just getting the mobilising the teams to be able to do that, it was starting from scratch. But it was a response to the emergency, so it moved out of the emergency response into how can we fix this? And then that's where the alliance model came in to say, okay, we can fix this through an alliance model. We need to get the contractors started on site. We can't define the full scope of works. We accept that there will be risks that will have to be shared. We accept that the government and the local council will have to take risk. But that is for the greater good, and it's proven to be an effective solution. It's a very interesting question, that one. I think there is a place for both, or all three in fact: a traditional form of contract, which is the majority of infrastructure works, alliance agreements, and also PPP. A PPP has just been signed in New Zealand. It's the Transmission Gully toll road, which is connecting parts of Wellington. It's about 800 million NZ dollars worth of work, and that is just now in the final design stages to start. That is an example of a major PPP that's been through. I think there will be more of those PPPs, particularly in the roading environment as the cities grow. But I don't think there's going to be a huge boom in toll roads. The population isn't there, the infrastructure is not required. Alliancing will have its place again but it will be on choice projects. There is still the need to protect the government's position in terms of risk. And one of the challenges with an alliance agreement is that the risks tend to be slightly open-ended, as whilst the contractors will cap their risks contractually, the government generally will accept unlimited risk. And unless you've got the teams in place that can manage that, it can have adverse outcomes. But there is a place for it moving forward, and I think it will be used alongside these other forms of procurement. I found out about IP3, I should go back a step, within my career, which has been delivering major capital works projects. I've always been on the periphery of P3, working in the UK for 15 years. There was a lot of PFI projects about there, one of which I was associated with doing the enabling works, was the University of Birmingham Hospital PFI project, which is in Birmingham, England. The opportunity came up through the agency to do some training and looking at where major capital works are going, where government departments need to go. PPP is the way that it is going, as capital's not always going to be there from the Crown. Looking at the remaining projects that there are within Christchurch to deliver, there is a potential opportunity there for use of PPP style projects. So it was an opportunity to explore that and understand that course. The course itself has been interesting. Doing the strategic course, it covered a lot of ground. That, from my background, I knew a fair amount of that, but it actually infilled a lot of pieces and joined lots of dots, so I found it very useful. There are still a number of major projects that need to be finished, all of which have potential funding gaps. So what we need to do is to look to see if we can use some form of PPP to fill those funding gaps with some private sector, because we talk about getting the private sector involved. The bus interchange, which is a project I've just finished, we looked at in the feasibility stage as to how we could involve the private sector. And we found in that case, just because of the size of it and the availability of land, it wasn't a viable private development option, PPP style option, because of the size. The challenge that we're going to face with the other projects is just that. It is understanding what and how the private sector can get its return that will then actually add value for money to the Crown to finish off those anchor projects.